You know that feeling when your mind is just a noisy city street? Thoughts are just honking and racing past each other, and you just can't make it stop? Well, what if I told you there's a single question, almost like a magic trick, that could bring all that chaos to a screeching halt? That's kind of the whole idea behind a Korean Zen practice called Ganhwa Seon. And for some people, the need to find that silence, well, it's incredibly personal. Yeah, this is not just some philosophical thought experiment. We're talking about 26 real people who went to Unbuam Temple for a 6-day silent retreat, and for them, the stakes couldn't be higher. For this one participant, it was about facing the single biggest fear any of us can have. And then for someone else, it was about a totally different kind of fear, right? The uncertainty of what do you do next after a whole career is over? Yet people there from all walks of life, trying to deal with anxiety, trying to find a new purpose, or just trying to figure themselves out. This is the very human story behind what turns out to be one of Korea's most intense spiritual practices. Okay, so their guide for this whole thing is Zen Master Subul Sunim. And his first instruction is, well, it's pretty radical. He basically tells them, everything you think you know, forget it. All those practices you've done before, let them go. He wants them to completely empty their minds because, as he puts it, you can't pour a single drop of new water into a cup that's already full. So the tool he gives them to do this is something called a Hwadu. Now, this is really important. It's not a riddle. It's not something you're supposed to solve with logic. There's no clever answer you're supposed to come up with. Think of it more like a sword. A sword that's designed to just slice right through that endless chain of thoughts that's always running in your head. And here it is. This is the Hwadu he gives to all 26 of them. He has them hold up a finger, flick it, and then he just asks, what makes me do this? Sounds so simple, doesn't it? Almost too simple. But that one question, that's the starting gun for what becomes a truly profound and honestly an often agonizing journey inward. So, the retreat begins. Total silence. Everyone is just sitting there with this one single question. And almost right away, the internal chaos just erupts. You see, for the mind, this question isn't some peaceful mantra. Oh no, it's a declaration of war. On day one, the main feeling in the room is just pure confusion. The logical part of the brain just goes into overdrive. It's desperately trying to figure out the point of the question. What does he mean? Is there an answer? Is this some kind of trick? This is the mind's first line of defense, just trying to wrestle the problem into submission. And for a lot of them, this feels nothing like peaceful meditation. Not at all. It feels more like being given some impossible assignment at work with a crazy deadline. And that mental pressure, it doesn't stay mental for long. It becomes physical. You're talking tightness in the chest, a heart that's just pounding. That's the body reacting to a mind that's totally under siege. As the hours turn into days, that feeling of being completely lost just gets more and more intense. Every time they try to use logic to find an answer, they just hit a dead end. People started describing it like being thrown into a huge ocean with no land anywhere, or just wandering around in complete darkness. And here's the crazy part. That feeling of being hopelessly lost, that's actually the whole point, because it brings a huge fundamental conflict to the surface. And that conflict is this. The practice forces a head-on collision with the one tool they've always used to solve everything, their own thinking. Their entire lives they've used logic and reason to figure things out. But here, in this room, those very things are the problem. They're the obstacle. The path isn't about being clever and finding an answer. It's about letting go of all answers and just holding on to that raw, sincere doubt. And this quote from a philosophy professor just nails it. This is a guy who studied these ideas for decades, right? And even he was totally overwhelmed. He said all that book knowledge, all that theory was completely useless. He felt like he was just flailing around in the water, unable to use any of the stuff he thought he knew. So you'd think all this struggle, all this agony, means they're doing it wrong, right? That they're failing. But this is where Ganhwa Seon completely flips the script. That struggle, it isn't a bug in the system, it's the entire feature. And that is such a powerful way to reframe the whole experience. The Zen master tells them that feeling of being totally stuck, that suffocating, maddening frustration, that's not something you're supposed to run away from. That is the fuel for your practice. It's the very energy source that's going to power the breakthrough. And this gets us to the absolute core idea here, something he calls the mental wall. The Zen master says that all of us, we live behind this invisible wall. It's built out of everything we know, everything we've experienced, all our beliefs. Most of us don't even know it's there. The Hwadu, that little question. It's a tool designed to make you run headfirst into that wall again and again and again until it finally shatters. So as this pressure just keeps building and the mind gets pushed to its absolute limit, some really extraordinary things start to happen. People report having these intense visions, like seeing trees just burst into flames. Some said they felt like their own body was a ball of fire. Physical stuff too, tremors, massive headaches, and people just start crying uncontrollably without even knowing why. This is what it looks like when the mind and body hit their breaking point.
Now, right at this critical moment, what's the instruction? To take a break? To back off? Nope. It's to push harder. The Zen master tells them they have to be stubborn. He says you need the sheer determination to see this thing through to the very end, even if it feels like your entire being is being torn apart, physically and mentally.
So, what happens if you actually push through all of that? What's the big answer? What is it that makes you move your finger? Well, this is where the final and kind of beautiful paradox of this whole practice shows up. Here's the most important part of all. The Hwadu was never a question that needed an answer. It was bait. It's a tool that's designed to completely wear out that logical, ego-driven, answer-hungry part of your mind. The whole goal is to keep that part of your brain so busy, so frustrated, and so tied up in knots that it just gives up. It collapses from sheer exhaustion.
And what happens when that wall of thinking finally comes crumbling down? You don't get some clever, witty answer. Nope. What you get is a complete shift in how you see everything. The world itself doesn't change. The mountain is still a mountain. But your way of seeing it is totally different. Suddenly, everything just feels clear and direct and real in a way you've never experienced before.
So let's just quickly recap this whole wild journey. It all starts with a question that you literally can't solve. You hold on to it with this deep, sincere doubt, and you just swat away every single answer your brain tries to give you. You actually use that horrible, agonizing frustration as fuel, pushing and pushing, until the very structure of your own thoughts, that mental wall, just gives way. And on the other side, a totally new way of seeing. Look, these participants were forced to come face to face with the walls of their own knowledge, their own assumptions. And that really just leaves one last question for us to think about, doesn't it? What are the invisible walls, the beliefs we never question, the ideas we just assume are true, that might be building the reality that you're living in right now?